Hey everyone, Joe Boone, the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs here, inviting you to join a very special podcast, 30 Minutes Live with CDP. It's every Wednesday and Friday night on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter.
Hey everybody, it's your bro CDP here on this Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday, June 9th at 1 o'clock. I'm looking forward to my guest today, and that's Dan Shulman from Sportsnet, the TV play-by-play voice of the Blue Jays, and ESPN Major League Baseball coverage on their TV coverage, and also ESPN Radio, as well as their lead announcer for ESPN's men's college basketball as well. So give me 1 second, guys, and I will bring Dan on here, and I really appreciate Dan's time today. So, hi, Dan. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey, can you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear. You got me?
Yeah, perfect. I always like to check because sometimes you never know with TV and radio if there's glitches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming on today. So
you got it.
Yeah, I was going to say you're doing the Jays series against Chicago, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess your game tonight's what, 8 o'clock our time, and about 7 Chicago.
Yeah, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Chicago time. Tough series, good team. White Sox are really good. Blue Jays are good, but they're in a tough part of their schedule right now. And interesting game last night, close until the 8th inning, and then the White Sox kind of blew it open against the Blue Jay bullpen. But we'll see what tonight has in store.
I was going to say I totally agree with you on the White Sox. I'm a Tigers fan, and the Tigers are in a rebuild. But I was going to say right now, Tampa Bay, Boston, Chicago, and Oakland are kind of the top 4 teams in the American League so far.
I think Tampa Bay. I would put Tampa Bay, Chicago, and Houston. I think would be in my mind the top 3 teams. But it's very close. Boston's having a good year. Oakland's a good team. Certainly, I think the Blue Jays could get up into that group, but they're going to have to get healthy and maybe go out and make a couple of trades. I really like the White Sox. I think they are terrific. Their offense is good. Their starting rotation is great. And they've got some really electric arms in their bullpen. So I think they're going to be a very tough out for whoever they play in the playoffs.
I was going to say, what would you say with the Blue Jays? Do you think it's their starting pitching that needs to be upgraded or their bullpen?
Oh, right now it's the bullpen, no question. I mean, at the beginning of the year, and it's funny how much can change over the course of a baseball season, and they're not even halfway through, not even really close to halfway through. At the beginning of the year, it was definitely the rotation. But, Robbie Ray has been absolutely great for 8 or 9 starts now, and Alek Manoah's come up, and he's had one good one not so good. We'll see how he does tonight. Ross Stripling looks like he's stabilized things. So right now the rotation looks pretty good. The bullpen had the best numbers in baseball in April. And now since then, they've been one of the worst bullpens in baseball. And a lot of it, of course, is injuries. Julian Merriweather out, David Phelps out for the year, Ryan Borucki out. We don't know when he's coming back. Just missing some really important guys. And I think by far the biggest issue they have right now is the bullpen. I just don't know how they fix it in the short term. Patrick Murphy could come up from the minors. Maybe Travis Bergen comes back at some point soon, but he's not a savior. He's just a guy who can help on the left side. But they're going to have to figure it out, whether it's from within or going out and making a trade or two. They got to get some arms into that bullpen pretty quickly, in my estimation.
I think they're not the only team, I think, that has bullpen issues as well. So I'm like I said, I'm a Tigers fan too, and I think our starting pitching, or the Tigers starting pitching, has been solid, but I think they could address their bullpen as well.
Yeah, most teams could. And you can always find a reliever on the trade market, but Detroit's obviously, in a different situation. As you said, they're rebuilding, so they're not looking to add to their team during the season. They're looking to accumulate prospects and get better in the future. For a contending team, or a team that's supposed to contend, like the Blue Jays, there's more urgency. And there's immediate urgency in my mind, playing the White Sox and then the Red Sox and then the Yankees. It's an interesting 10 days coming up for the Blue Jays. And, nobody throws complete games anymore. So you got to go to the bullpen at some point. And other than Jordan Romano, I don't know who Charlie Montoyo can really turn to with a ton of confidence right now. So unless the Blue Jays put up 8, 9, 10 runs, it's going to be a scary last couple of innings at times for the Jays.
I was going to say, Jerry Howers wanted me to say hi to you because I had him on my podcast a couple weeks ago. He is the nicest guy. He treated me like I was one of his own, and he just wanted me to say hi to you when I told him that you were going to be able to come on.
I appreciate that. Jerry's a wonderful man. I first met him, I would guess, in 1991 is when I started working. It wasn't even the Fan then, when I started working a little bit at CJCL. And by 1992, I was doing some of the pregame shows and postgame shows for Blue Jays broadcasts. And I was lucky enough to go down to the ballpark sometimes and be in the booth with Tom and Jerry. And they both were just wonderful to me from the day that I met them. And I was young. I was only like 25 years old at the time, but they were both incredible to me. And I have, very fond feelings for Tom, who unfortunately passed on some years ago, and for Jerry. In many ways, I listened to zillions of games when I was younger too on the radio, first with Tom and Early Win, and then with Tom and Jerry. So, getting a chance to be in the booth and get to know them and to call them friends is one of the great pleasures of my career.
And I was going to say, and as being a Tigers fan, I grew up with Ernie Harwell and Paul Carey for many years, and then George Kell and Al Kaline as well. So I kind of grew up in the radio era of the 70s, and because a lot of games there was only very few baseball games back on TV in the late 70s and early 80s. And a lot of the times I ended up having to listen to CJCL 1430 or WJR 760 in Detroit on the radio.
Yeah, 1430 is where I started working, and I've listened to 760 a lot. I went to school in London, Ontario, so that's halfway between Toronto and Detroit. Tiger Stadium was actually the first ballpark other than Exhibition Stadium in Toronto that I ever went to, and love that. And Ernie Harwell is one of my very, very, very favorite broadcasters of all time. And when I started out in the business, Ernie was still calling games for the Tigers, and I got a chance to meet him in the press box at Tiger Stadium. Or when the Tigers would come to Toronto, but a little bit more in Detroit. And again, just a gentleman, and just to shake his hand and introduce myself, and to have him spend a minute or two to chat with me is another great memory that I have.
Yeah, one of my first games I went to in Tiger Stadium was August '82, Frank Tanana for Texas against Jack Morris, and I was like in awe of that stadium as a 10-year-old kid back then.
Yeah, that's a good matchup. Tiger Stadium I think is my favorite ballpark that in many ways that I've ever been to. Firstly, it felt historic and older, and I love how deep it was in center field, and how the right field second deck hung over the lower deck. And in the 80s, as you know, the Blue Jays and Tigers had an incredible rivalry. In my opinion, the best rivalry the Blue Jays have ever had with any team was with the Tigers in the 80s when they were in the same division. And we saw it a little bit in 84. We really saw it in 87. And I just loved going there. I was sad, time waits for no one. But I was sad when and Comerica is beautiful, but I was sad when they tore down Tiger Stadium. I absolutely loved going there. And our broadcast booth at Tiger Stadium, all the broadcast booths at Tiger Stadium, were closer to the field, closer to home plate than any other place that I've ever broadcast. You could hear everything that was being said. You had to be incredibly alert and focused. You couldn't look away, look down at your notes, because somebody could foul the ball back and in a heartbeat. You would have no chance of getting out of the way. And you could see on the back wall of the broadcast booth, there were dents in the wall from all the foul balls that would come into the booth. Some people would broadcast with a net up. Some people would broadcast with a glove on, as crazy as that sounds. I didn't do either of those things, but I loved going to Tiger Stadium.
Definitely. So yes, Dan, since you said you got a half an hour, I'm going to just try to get all the questions that I wanted to highlight to get in on here. The first question I was going to ask you, Dan, is how has it been in the past year calling games in either a studio or at your home instead of being in an arena or a stadium?
Challenging, very different. And I understand it, obviously. I'm not arguing with it or complaining about it, but it's been very different. When I call a game, whether it's in studio or at home for baseball, I see basically what you see at home on your TV. We have a couple of other camera angles. We have something called an all-9, which is a camera high above home plate, shoots down on the field. So in theory, I can see if the infield's in or if the shift is on. But there are some things like, if a runner's trying to steal a base, I might not always see that in the moment that it happens. If a guy's trying to score from second on a base hit, I might not always see that as quickly as I would like. Or if a ball's fair or foul down the line, when I'm at the ballpark, if I'm not sure, I can look at the umpire and call it the way that he calls it. I can't do that now. I can't see the umpire. So there are things that are difficult, even sometimes like Can we get a feed from the press box or the PA announcer to know, was that a hit or an error? You know, those things are harder. And it's a little bit on a case-by-case situation. So again, I totally understand it. And, you know, safety and health are the most important things. But I miss being in a ballpark. I haven't been in a ballpark for a game since Game 7 of the World Series in 2019. That's a long time. So I'm hopeful that later on this season, whether it's in Buffalo or Toronto, I'll be able to get back to a ballpark. And the same for basketball. I did do some games for college basketball for ESPN in an arena this year, but I did several from home, right from where I'm sitting right now in my office, and a bunch from an ESPN studio in Charlotte. And it's tough. You know, the officials are huddling and you don't know what they're talking about because, you know, nobody can come over and tell you what's going on. Basketball is a little bit easier because the play's contained in a more finite area of a court. Baseball, all kinds of things can happen, and it's a big space. So, and the other thing too is your only contact with the players is through a Zoom call. So there are like 20 of us on a Zoom call with one player each day. So you don't get that opportunity to walk up to a player's locker and say, hey, how you feeling? Or what are you working on? You just don't have that anymore. And baseball is such a storytelling sport. It's wonderful to get that access to the players to help you fill the time and tell stories during a game. So I'm hopeful we'll get that back at some point.
Okay. I was just reading up on you too, Dan, that you went to the University of Western Ontario, obviously, but you originally took science, I guess.
Actuarial science. It's a math degree. So yeah. I was an actuarial science major and graduated as an actuary and actually worked as an actuary for 6 months. And for people who don't know, that's kind of pensions and insurance and that sort of stuff. So that's what I went to school intending to do and graduated with a degree in that. And just kind of by fluke started volunteering at the campus radio station at Western. And that's where I got the bug. This was a total accident, though, that I wound up in this career.
Well, it's like with me a couple years ago, the Guelph Nighthawks, the CEBL, I was volunteering with them and they needed a cameraman at the last second. I had never done television work before, and they gave me an opportunity. The producer liked my work. They actually paid me for it. And they said, if you want to get into broadcasting, volunteer with Rogers TV, and Rogers TV here in Kitchener in the Guelph area gave me an opportunity. And I've been doing the Guelph Storm games. And
That's
I
great.
guess I got the broadcasting bug from Rogers and the Guelph Nighthawks, and then with this pandemic, I started my own podcast a year ago, and this is something I really enjoy doing.
That's great. Yeah, all you can ask for is an opportunity, and when you get one, you try to make the best of it and hope somebody notices and gives you another opportunity. And I've had a lot of those over the course of my career where you didn't even realize people were noticing or paying attention, but maybe something good comes your way a little bit later on. And I always tell, especially students, young people who ask me about the business, be prepared to work hard and be prepared to work strange hours and do whatever they tell you to do. And when you're finished doing it, go up to them and say, what do you want me to do next? Because there are a lot of people who want to get into the industry. So you've got to have a good work ethic and you've got to be adaptable and flexible and open-minded. But I never expected to make a career out of it, never expected to work in the US or on TV or to do play-by-play or any of that. When I got into it, I just hoped that I would be able to work at a radio station in Toronto, which was my home and where I wanted to stay. And things just kind of got rolling from there.
Yes. I totally agree with working hard and stuff like that, because I've been doing the podcast 2-3 times a week for pretty well a year. And then the last 6 months I've had guests on. I've been lucky enough to get guests like yourself and John Murphy, the voice of the Bills, and Bob Sochi, the voice of the Patriots. So I really appreciate this opportunity on here.
You're welcome. I try to do as many as I can. I get more requests than I'm able to fulfill, but happy to do it and happy to talk broadcasting stories and sports.
Okay. My next question for you, Dan, is how important was it for you to volunteer at a local community television station, such as Rogers, or et cetera, like that?
So the only time I did that when I was working at CKBB in Barrie, which was my first job in the business, kind of similar to your situation, I guess, the Barrie Colts, who are now in the OHL, but at the time they were, I think we called it a junior A team at the time. They were a level below the OHL. Barrie wasn't in the OHL at the time. And my roommate and I, we both worked at the radio station. To be honest with you, I don't remember how it happened. If we approached them or they approached, I would assume we approached them. And the games were not being broadcast, I don't believe, on the Rogers station, the community station up there. And they were into it and we were into it. So for a year, I called Barrie Colts hockey on the cable station up there. And so that is, I think that's my only experience volunteering at a local community station, to answer your question. And it was great fun. It just gave us something to do at night when our shifts were over. We were both working days at the time. And, he was my buddy. I was the play-by-play guy. He was the analyst. And the Colts were good. And they played the Collingwood Blues and the Aurelia Terriers and teams like that. And it was good hockey. And I love hockey. And these were 17, 18-year-old kids trying to make their way up to the OHL and then up to the NHL. I remember Jason Arnott, who had a great NHL career. He played a bunch of games in that league this year, games that we called. So it was really fun. It was nice to do it. I didn't care that I wasn't getting paid. I was just happy to do it and work on my hockey skills a little bit, work on my TV skills, and just, try something new in the business.
Okay. My next question, Dan, for you is, how did you end up as one of the originals at the Fan 590 in Toronto? How did that come about?
So I was working in Barrie, and I had a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody at CJCL. And that got me a meeting, not even an interview, but a meeting. And I played some of my work for them. And this is before the internet. So I brought a cassette tape into some of my work from Barrie. And the news director at the time, Scott Metcalf, said, okay, well, let's keep in touch and keep working. And let's, send me your tapes and come in and visit sometimes. And I did that for a few months, and eventually they hired me. So, I'm very grateful to them. I was very young and I was very raw. Again, I didn't have any kind of a journalism or broadcasting degree. I was just kind of learning it on the fly, but I was learning a lot in Barrie. I was doing everything in Barrie. The smaller the station, the more things you get asked to do. And I was learning a lot and feeling good about it. And after about a year and a half in Barrie, eventually I got hired down at CJCL. They were moving towards being an all sports station. And at the time, their newscasters were also doing sports on the weekend, but they wanted to bring in a sportscaster. They wanted to have a dedicated sportscast because they wanted to appeal more to the sports audience and move towards being an all sports station. So that's how I started. My first thing at CJCL was being a weekend sportscaster.
Okay. The next question I was going to ask you, Dan, is what was it like becoming the TSN TV voice of the Blue Jays in 1995? I believe taking over for Jimmy Houston, alongside now your current color guy and play-by-play guy, Buck Martinez.
Yeah, the biggest break I've ever gotten. So I was working at the Fan at CJCL, had become the Fan, and I was doing primetime sports at the time, and I was doing, again, pre- and post-game shows for Blue Jays games. And Jim Houston, as you say, had been the voice of the Blue Jays and was also doing hockey, as he still does. And I guess he decided that he just wanted to focus on hockey and move back to Vancouver and not work year round, doing two different sports, very hard to do. So the job opened up and I auditioned for it, and they said, didn't get it initially. They said, thanks, but no thanks. And then a couple of months later, they called me back and asked me if I was interested still. And I said, of course I am. And got the job. And I don't know who they tried to hire before or what happened there, but it was by far the biggest break in my life. I was only 28 years old, and all of a sudden I was getting a chance to call Major League Baseball for my hometown team on a national TV network. It was crazy to me that this was happening. But Scott Moore was the boss of TSN at the time, and he's the one who took a chance on me and hired me. And it was great. Buck taught me so much in the early years. And just being around the Blue Jays, being around baseball, traveling to other cities, going to ballparks, it was crazy. It was beyond my wildest dreams. It really was. And it was the biggest break I got, and it led to a bunch of other breaks that I would get later.
I was going to say that leads into my next question. What was it? How much of an adjustment was it going full time with ESPN in 2001?
Yeah, it was. But I had started working for ESPN before. I'd actually been working for ESPN since 1995. In the winters, I had been doing college basketball for them. And in the summers, whenever Buck and I did not do a Blue Jay game on a Wednesday night for TSN, ESPN would have us come in and do a game for them. So I could be in Baltimore with the Blue Jays on a Tuesday, and then Buck and I would fly to Chicago to do a White Sox game for ESPN Wednesday, and then we'd fly back to Baltimore to do a Blue Jays game on Thursday. So I knew ESPN already, but going there full time, I guess it was an adjustment, and it was a hard choice, but a good choice. I mean, ESPN offered me full-time baseball and full-time college basketball, so a year-round job. And with the Blue Jays at the time, where they were going, because the television networks were changing, was I had to be all in if I was going to stay with the Blue Jays. So I had to basically choose only Blue Jays or only ESPN. And at the time, I thought only ESPN was my best career choice. And it's turned out to be wonderful. And I'm very grateful I did it. And I'm also very grateful I'm back with the Blue Jays doing games again now, too. So it's worked out well. So it was an adjustment. And from 2001 through 2015, I did not do any work in Canada, really. I mean, I was full-time for ESPN. And so virtually every game I did, unless it was a very rare Blue Jay game I would do for ESPN, every game I did was in the US. So a lot of traveling, a lot of traveling. And, so that's a little complicated too. My kids were at a certain age then, and I missed out on a lot of stuff. But from a professional point of view, going to ESPN was terrific for me.
Definitely. And I was going to say, besides yourself, I'm a huge fan of Joel Davis, who does the Dodgers games.
Mm-hmm. He's great.
And Joel Buck too. You guys, because I was a fan of Jack Buck, his father, and then Joe, and then Joel Davis of the Dodgers. He's amazing. I didn't know this. He's from Michigan originally.
Yes, he's from Michigan, and I think he went to school in Minnesota, and he used to work for ESPN. He started doing some stuff for ESPN for a few years, and then the Dodgers picked him up, and he is off to the races. He's fantastic.
Definitely.
He's probably, like 32, 33 years old. He's very young. I've known Joe Buck a long time. His dad, Jack, who you mentioned, is my all-time favorite broadcaster, just ahead of Ernie Harwell, I guess. And meeting Jack Buck in St. Louis when I started doing ESPN games was very exciting for me as well. But, those two guys are great. They really are. Joe Buck has had an incredible career, and Joe Davis is on his way to having an incredible career, and they both deserve it.
Yeah, and he's got big footsteps to follow in Vin Scully, too.
Yes, which is not easy. And I think Joe has done that masterfully by being very likable, which he is. You can't force yourself to be likable, but he's very likable, very understated, very incredibly respectful, obviously, of everything that Vin has done. And the fans love him. He's got a wonderful rapport with Oral Hershiser, which I can relate to. I worked with Oral for many years on ESPN, and he and Joe make a great team. And you're right, following a Vin Scully, following an Ernie Harwell, those are not a Harry Callis in Philadelphia. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And Joe Davis has done great.
The one thing I've been told by everybody in this industry is always be yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think that's a good lesson for any walk of life. But it's hard to pretend to be somebody different on the air than you are, especially when you're a play-by-play person and you're doing a live 3-hour event. Mm-hmm. You have to be true to yourself. You'd be expending a tremendous amount of energy trying to be something that isn't natural to yourself. So be yourself and treat the people well that you work with. You're all part of a big team. But that I would think that's the same for virtually any job you could have.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, Dan. Are you okay for time for a few more minutes?
Yeah, we're doing fine. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. The next question I wanted to ask you, what was it like calling Barry Bonds' 754th home run on July 27th, 2007, and it was against the Florida Marlins pitcher, Rick Vanden Hurk?
I will be honest with you. I don't have the clearest memories of that, to be honest with you. And I know, and I assume you found that I know it's on my Wikipedia page, and I assume that's where you found it. But there are 25 other moments in my career that I remember more vividly than that. I do remember, being a little bit conflicted. Hank Aaron is one of my favorite all-time players, and Barry Bonds came with a lot of baggage, right? And performance enhancing drug allegations and so forth. So I do remember kind of having, not the typical feelings you would have about somebody chasing down a record of that magnitude. But it was a big moment in 1998. I called some McGuire and Sosa home runs. And again, those were a little complicated as well, although I think I was pretty naive in 1998 about exactly what was going on. But so in the moment you get into it, but it's funny. The Bonds one I get asked about a little bit, but it's when I think of, the most memorable moments of my career, that actually isn't one that pops into my head.
Okay. This next question I wanted to ask you, because I just wanted to see what your response is. What is the biggest difference from doing radio play-by-play to television play-by-play?
Very different. So radio, you have to paint a picture always. TV, you don't. You have the pictures. So, and as you may know, we're doing a simulcast this year, radio and TV together, and that's challenging. And I'm trying to help out radio as much without being too overbearing on TV. But radio is very different. You'll say things like the pitcher comes set, kicks, deals. You'll set the scene. You'll paint a picture. And you have to give the score and the inning and the base runners and the outs way, way more than you do on TV. I bet you I talk, when I do a game for ESPN Radio, I bet you I talk 3 times as much. I bet you I say 3 times as many words in a radio broadcast as I do in a pure television broadcast. So in terms of how has it been doing play-by-play the past year at studio or home, we kind of covered that. But it's... Yeah. It has its challenges. I mean, it has its positives as well. I can do a game at 7:00, it ends at 10, and I can watch TV with my wife at 10:03. So that you try to take the positives out of it where you can. But all in all, I'd like to be back in a ballpark.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, Dan. This one I wanted to ask you. What was it like following in the footsteps? I rephrased it because when I talked to Bob Sochi, I said, what was it like taking over? And Bob was nice enough to say, it's not taking over, it's following in the footsteps. So yeah. I was just going to rephrase it, following the footsteps of John Miller and the late Joe Morgan, who did Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN for a long time.
Intimidating. John Miller, in my mind, is one of the very best baseball broadcasters who's ever lived. And I knew John, and I had worked with Joe, so I knew Joe better. But when I found out that ESPN was going to make a change and they wanted me to do Sunday Night Baseball and they offered it to me, obviously I accepted, but it came with a lot of nervousness. My first Sunday night game is one of the most nervous moments that I've ever had in my career. And I just kept trying to tell myself, don't do anything differently than you've done before. They hired you because of what you've done. So just keep doing what you're doing. And I had a lot of great people on the crew who helped me. And again, I'd been at ESPN for a lot of years already, 15, 16 years. So I knew everybody I was working with. I knew how it worked at ESPN. I just knew the routine, but it was very intimidating. You don't follow somebody like John Miller and not break out in a cold sweat the first time that you're doing the job that he did so well for years. But I would say by May or June of the first year, I'd kind of settled in and felt pretty comfortable.
And you also worked with John Kruk, I believe, and Oral Hershiser you mentioned, and Jessica Mendoza as well.
Yep, and Aaron Boone and Terry Francona and Tony Gwynn and David Justice and Kurt Schilling and I'm forgetting people. Bobby Valentine, we mentioned Oral, so I've been blessed, and that's just on the baseball side with ESPN. College basketball, I got a whole other group of people that I worked with. So, it's, again, not things I expected to do when I went to my parents and said, hey, I'd like to give radio a try back in 1990. It's the friendships that I've made and the connections I've been able to have are very special to me.
And speaking of that, that's what one thing I've been told to you on here is the more connections you get, the better it will be for you in the future if you can make a lot of connections and contacts and all that.
Yeah, again, like anything, that's like any profession. So treat people well and make connections and pounce on the opportunities you're given.
Definitely. Just 2 more questions for you, Dan, and I'll let you go if that's okay. Just got to ask you this one. What's your most memorable Major League Baseball call, both on radio and television? Maybe one with the Blue Jays and ESPN college basketball, since you do a lot of college basketball for ESPN.
So for the Blue Jays, ironically, it's probably a game that I did for ESPN Radio, not for Sportsnet or TSN, but that's because I haven't done the playoffs for the Blue Jays, but I have done the playoffs for ESPN Radio, and I did the Jose Bautista bat flip game for ESPN Radio. So that's got to be, I think, the most memorable one that I've done. For college basketball, again, kind of a similar story. ESPN does not have the NCAA tournament. And I get asked all the time, oh, you must be gearing up for March Madness. And I don't do March Madness. We finish right before March Madness. So my moments are regular season moments. So for folks in Canada, I don't know if they will be aware of them. But, I've had a chance to do so many Duke, North Carolina games, go to Kansas and Kentucky and Michigan State, wonderful places. But the one I remember more than anything is Indiana knocking off #1 unbeaten Kentucky back in 2011. They had Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and they had an unbelievable team. And a player named Christian Watford hit a 3 at the buzzer at Indiana as the Hoosiers stunned the Wildcats. And that's one that jumps out at me. But more than that, again, more than the individual games, it's just the memories of going into all the different arenas, these historic buildings, and how lucky I am to have been there.
I was going to say, and I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan, so I'm hoping Juwan Howard can stay at Michigan for a little while, because I think he's done a good job with that program. So
yeah, he has. He's got him going.
Definitely. And my last question for you, Dan, because I'm going to let you go. Any advice, not just for myself, for those looking to pursue a career in TV, radio, sportscaster, media, etc.?
Yeah, I always say the same three things: work hard, and again, these apply to everybody, but to everything. But work hard, be a good teammate with the people on your crew that you work with, and understand that sacrifices have to be made. That could mean travel. That could mean working nights and weekends. That could mean making very little money. That could mean having to relocate to another city, but it's not a normal 9-to-5 job. So if you want to get into it with your eyes open. Understand it's a lot of work. It's more work and less glamour than people think it is, and understand that there are sacrifices to be made. But if you're one of the lucky ones like I've been, then it's all worth it. Okay,
no problem. And you do have a podcast too on Sportsnet, Swinging a Belt with yourself. Can you just tell people when it's normally on?
Actually, I've stopped doing it. I did it the last couple of years, but I'm not doing it anymore. So yeah, basically I'm Blue Jays on Sportsnet, and then college basketball on ESPN.
Okay, Dan, I'm going to let you go, but I just want to say, hey, thank you so much for coming on 30 Minutes Live with CDP, and I really appreciate this again.
My pleasure, Chris. Be well.
You too. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to say thank you to Dan Shulman for coming on today. I really appreciate him coming on 30 Minutes Live with CDP. I hope you guys liked the interview with him and that. Before I go, guys, I'm going to just show a little video clip of Dan's work with John Kruk from 2014. Just 1 second, guys. I'm just going to put this on here.
I have been given the opportunity and the honor to broadcast from the bleachers tonight. So we came into the ballpark along with some fans down the right field line, climbed up a whole mess of steps up to our location here in right field. And here we are settling in a couple of hours ago and getting a very unique perspective on a baseball game.
I've always wanted to watch a game from the bleachers. I just didn't think I'd do it with you. I don't know how we're going to work it.
Oh, Sherholtz just threw one into the stands just to the right of us. Well, because between the two of us, there's little doubt you're the guy who should be wearing the glove. So we had a play in the first inning. This ball hit to deep right field, and because of where we are, kind of tough to see Sherholtz. So you got to get into the game, Truckee. The ball hit to deep right field. Sherholtz back, and he makes the catch on the warning track. Carpenter had gone all the way to second, and he's going to be doubled off. Here comes the chop.
My favorite person.
Got some Chicago dogs right here. Loaded. Chicago style.
Oh my gosh.
3 for you and 1 for me.
Yeah. With fries.
We got to do this. We should do this every week from the bleachers.
Yeah.
I think at different ball.
Where are we at next week?
Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah.
That's some good stuff. We have a young man here. This is Grant. He's from Norwalk, Iowa. Grant, look way out there. See that red light way down there by the third base dugout? This is Grant from Norwalk, Iowa, big Cubs fan, and he's going to do, the traditional what you say at the end of the seventh inning stretch.
Yeah.
A 1, a 2, a 3. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me root for the. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Let's get some runs.
Anyways, guys, I hope you liked that clip of Dan Shulman with John Kruk from Wrigley Field in 2014. So before I head out, guys, once again, thank you all for watching 30 Minutes Live with CDP on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and later it's going to be downloaded on audio. I'm just going to put that on here right now for my for right over 1 second, guys. Let's see. Just 1 second. I'm just trying to find all my audio stuff. Oh, there it is, guys. 30 Minutes Live with CDP. The audio version is now on Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. Please hit like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also, if you would like to subscribe to the audio version, you can do it on these podcasts that I mentioned here. So anyways, let's see, guys. I'm just going to do some comments here. Let's see. Never say no to any opportunity that'll get your foot into broadcasting. Yes, Aaron, I agree. Thank you so much, Aaron, for watching. I really appreciate it. I didn't think I'd be able to get Dan on here because of his busy schedule, but it was great that he actually gave me half an hour. And this is one of my first shows in a long time where it's been a half an hour. But I think I asked the questions I wanted to ask to Dan, and I really appreciate Dan coming on. He's one of the best in the business, along with Joe Davis, who does Spectrum LA for the Dodgers, and also the NFL Network and some Fox work as well. He's one of the best. So, and another comment or anything in that matter. I totally agree, Aaron. I totally agree with you. And then Mark Richardson. Hey, Mark, thanks for coming on and watching this early edition of 30 Minutes Live with CDP. You're always on here, Mark. I really appreciate that. So, and Aaron, thank you so much for coming on as well. I really appreciate it. Aaron, if you're still watching, maybe we can do an NBA podcast show at some point. Maybe for the conference finals, like we'll do a preview show of the Eastern Conference Final and the Western Conference. If you're interested in that, I still think the Brooklyn Nets are going to come out of the East. That's my opinion. I think they're the team to beat. So, anyways, guys, that's just some comments. Let's see. Before I go, we got NBA playoffs tonight. We got Denver at Phoenix. Game 2 at 9:30 in Phoenix. Suns lead that series 1-0, and we'll see what happens there. And the Utah beat the Clippers last night 112-109. So the Jazz were up 1-0 in that series. The Clippers outplayed the Jazz the first half, but the second half, the Jazz at home turned it on. So the Clippers are going to have to try to steal game 2 in Utah, which is not going to be easy. So we got 4 new teams basically in the Final Four in the West and the Eastern Conference. And the Nets and the Bucks have to win their next 2 games in Milwaukee to have a chance in this series, but it's not looking good right now with them as well. So, and the Sixers won last night 118-102 over the Hawks. The Sixers in the first game, the first half were awful, and then the second half they outplayed Atlanta, and they only lost by 4 points. But this second game, Philadelphia at home with Joel Embiid, I believe he had 40 points. First Sixer to have 40 points in a playoff game since Allen Iverson in 2003, I believe. The Sixers really outplayed Atlanta last night and won 118-102. But Atlanta did what they wanted to do. They got a split in Philly. So 3 of the next 5 games in the series, if it goes 7, will be in Atlanta. So the Sixers are going to have to play well to win this series in Atlanta. So we'll see what happens there. But the Sixers in the series so far have outplayed Atlanta 6 out of 8 quarters so far. That's just my 2 cents on that. Anyways, and I'm looking forward to this game tonight. And then we got hockey tonight, Stanley Cup playoffs round 2. We got Boston and the Islanders at 7:30 at the old barn. I call it the old barn at the Nassau Coliseum before 12,000 fans, the Yes fans. And the Islanders are up 3-2. So Islanders can win the series and eliminate Boston with a win tonight. Do you guys think Boston will tie it up and send it back to Boston for game 7? Or do you think the Islanders will move on? And as you guys know, Montreal beat Winnipeg the other last night, I believe 3-2. I think was it Monday or Tuesday night, but I know they eliminated Winnipeg in 4-game sweep. So, and then Vegas beat Colorado last night 3-2. So they're up 3-2 in that series as well. So anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm not normally on at 1 o'clock. But again, I just want to say thank you to Dan Shulman from ESPN and Sportsnet for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching my podcast. I really appreciate it. And just to let you guys know, the next 30 Minutes Live with CDP Podcast, I have a double header this Friday, June 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Caroline Chavez, Chief Meteorologist for CW8 in San Diego, California, will be on at 4 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock Eastern time, Marty Ross, stand-up comedian from LA and on America's Got Talent season 15, will be on my podcast as well. So yeah, guys, I'm going to have a busy day on Friday with 2 podcasts, but hopefully you can check out Caroline Chavez, Chief Meteorologist for CW8 in San Diego. And at 8 o'clock Eastern, Marty Ross, a stand-up comedian from the LA area, and he was on America's Got Talent in season 15. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyways, guys, like I said, I just want to say thanks all for watching 30 Minutes Live with CDP today, this afternoon edition. And if you guys give me a little bit of time, I will have this podcast downloaded on audio as well. And you can check it out again on here. One second, guys. Right here. Yep. 30 Minutes Live with CDP Podcast, Google, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and Spotify. So, guys, I'm going to call it a show. But like I said, guys, thank you again all for watching 30 Minutes Live with CDP. And we'll look forward to Friday's doubleheader with Carlene and Marty at 4 o'clock Eastern and 8 o'clock at night. Anyways, guys, enjoy the basketball game tonight. Enjoy the hockey. Go Suns, go Islanders. We'll see you Friday afternoon. Thanks again for watching 30 Minutes Live with CDP.